All right, guys, this is the first episode where we deep dive into different collectors' personal collections. For episode one, we have David Peck. You can follow him on Twitter at dpeck100 or on Instagram, which is 1982 Wrestling All Stars. David has a really amazing wrestling collection. I've seen it all over Twitter. And like you said, you're 42 years old and something that I have never seen out here. So, David, you want to talk a little bit about your personal collection, how you got into wrestling, and some of the different stuff you're going after?
Sure. I got into wrestling in 2009, and it was really sort of a fluke because I had grown up collecting baseball and basketball to some degree, but Brock Lesnar was going into the UFC, and then he was in the UFC, so I was he's been my favorite WWE wrestler since he debuted in 2002, and so UFC 100 came along, and they had put out, like, Topps had made these sort of like patch type cards, and admittedly, it's been my worst trading card investment ever. They finally have regained their $50 value. But anyway, long story short, I went to eBay and started searching for Brock cards, and within that, I bought his football cards and some wrestling. And I thought, in 1985, when I was a kid, Hulk Hogan had a Topps card. And so I searched for that, and I stumbled on the 1982 Wrestling All Stars, which is Hulk's earlier card. And, I bought that. And as soon as that happened, I was hooked.
Nice. So you mentioned the 1985 Wrestling All Stars and 1982. And is there any other sets out there that people should be looking forward to, like some of the bigger sets for wrestlers?
Oh, listen, there's a bunch. I mean, my sort of focus is 2002 to probably like the early 70s. Like, for example, like there's the 1998, 99 WCW autographs. Those have become extremely popular. For me, I just generally focus on, the earlier cards. And so the 2002 WWE Royal Rumble is a cool set. It's got, some, quote unquote true rookie cards in it. Lots of stuff from the 80s. So, there's more than just the Wrestling All Stars for sure.
Now, what really considers a rookie card with wrestling? I know with baseball in the past, with like pre-war, it considers like their first cards, but nowadays it looks at when a player actually got called up to the major leagues, which can lead to some confusion in the early 2000s because of different issues with players. But what really considers a rookie card in wrestling when they first debut on TV, when they first get called up and, let's say, for WWE, or how does that work?
I don't even know myself, to be honest with you. I mean, I think the Beckett has put out some rules as to what constitutes a rookie card, and I think they're completely stupid when you look at wrestling. So I'll give you an example. If you go by the Beckett rules for what constitutes a rookie card, Andre the Giant's rookie card is 1987 Topps. Now think about that for a second. He has cards as early as 1970, 69 to 70. He's in a Gong magazine that's a cutout, right? There's the 74 Yamakatsu. He's got lots of paper cards, 78, 81, and then 82. He's in the 85 sticker set, but 87 is the rookie card. So what I mean, it's completely
Makes no
stupid.
sense.
It makes no sense. So I think with wrestling, what you have to do is you just sort of go back in time and look and see what makes sense for you, right? So there are some that are just beyond cut and dry. Like one of the cards I pulled out, I'll show later, is the 2002 WWE Royal Rumble Brock Lesnar. That's cut and dry, right? It's his first issued card. Fleer was a national company. It's pack issued. It meets all the criteria. But like for somebody like me, I don't really spend any time worrying about rookie card status. I like to buy the early stuff of people I think are important. There can be more than one card. I would like to have a lot of irons in the fire, and and go from there. So the discussion is it's kind of interesting because you have some of these sort of fundamentalists that like are hardcore about, well, the rookie card has to be this. I couldn't care less.
Wrestlers, do you have any other tips for people just getting into the wrestling side of the hobby?
My tip always is just buy what you like. I think what's happened in the past 18 months is you've really seen so many people come into the hobby trying to make money. Now, under no circumstances am I suggesting that trying to make money off cards is bad. But if it's your sole purpose, I think a lot of people are going to be disappointed. And the reason I say that is because, cards go up, they go down, but you get a lot of enjoyment out of cards if you actually like the stuff you're buying. So in the wrestling space, years ago, it was incredibly cheap. Now, eBay is littered with listings at prices that to me are just mind boggling. So I think people need to be cautious and when I say do their homework, not just on price, but everybody's asking me all the time, what's the next big thing? Everything's already been discovered. There's no hidden gem, right? Like there are cards that will go up based on future activity, but we've been at this for years. I mean, I started grading cards in April of 2010. So my good buddy Rob England, he's been at it, another 5 or 6 years longer. I mean, every stone has been turned over. Now, that doesn't mean that they've run their course. I mean, let's face it, we've seen an explosion in the hobby the last 18 months. And so we're seeing, prices rise in all kinds of genres. And, there will be some stuff sort of that does better than perhaps me or the next person expects. But don't think that you're coming in today and just going to find the next big card. I mean, that's going to be tough.
Yeah, I noticed a few people also were mentioning about some of the wrestlers going into acting now. I mean, we obviously know about The Rock. A few people mentioned also John Cena, and I can't remember the other guy that they were talking about in the mentions. Does that really affect the value of the cards that much? Because I know obviously going from wrestling now to a non-sport as an acting, what have you seen over time with that?
We don't have a lot of data, if you will, to sort of support it. My experience has been that it helps. I mean, one of the things that over the years I have said is that you have wrestling cards and then you have pop culture wrestling cards. So if you take, just for argument's sake, Hulk Hogan is a global icon. He cannot walk down the street in any city and not be recognized. Dick Murdoch is the guy I always pick on because great wrestler, many people like him, some don't like him because of the redneck stuff, but I collect his cards. So for example, like in the 82 Wrestling All-Stars, the highest grade is a 9. Very tough card. It's got the purple borders, the tough centering, lots of print problems. So I will collect that. But your average collector is not diving in and buying a Dick Murdoch Wrestling All-Stars. They want a Hulk Hogan or they want a Rock. So I do believe that the pop culture element is the ultimate driver that differentiates cards. I did sell, for example, both of my best Rock cards this year. They had gone on astronomical runs in price. And, I just sort of decided that, I'd rather have the cash. But what drove the interest in those cards was their pop culture status. They didn't sell to quote unquote wrestling collectors. They sold to people that were interested in the movie status. Now, John Cena, for example, has been in movies, but you can't in any capacity put him in the same category as The Rock. I mean, The Rock has had, he started off with some, roles where, he was an action guy, limited talking. Now he's arguably the biggest male actor in Hollywood, right? So I think at the end of the day, I mean, it should come as no surprise that his stuff has gained a lot of interest. Um, Sasha Banks is a female wrestler. You know, she's been in a movie. Um, you know, there's lots of wrestlers over the years that have had minor roles. So it certainly doesn't hurt, but I don't think there's a lot to sort of go by because The Rock is he's in a league of his own. I mean, that guy's just a different deal.
Now you mentioned that you sold two of his cards. I know a lot of people think about the Sports Illustrated one. Was that one of those two cards? Illustrated, it's the college card. I know it had the perforations on it.
Yeah, but it's like a Sports Illustrated, so it's certainly a fair comparison. Yeah, I sold that, and what happened was no intention to sell it, but you know, prices had escalated to a degree that were so high, and I found myself in conversations with, you know, they realized I had one and said, well, we think we can sell it for this, and you know, I just decided to quote unquote hit the bid. The his 1997 Cardinal card, which is a wrestling card that came from a game. I sold that to Steve Aoki, the famous DJ, and that came from Instagram. Where you know it's a great story because I remember sitting in bed one night, and I'm electronic music is sort of my favorite, and I will say, you know, some of his stuff's never been my deal, but he's in the genre, and I mean, the guy is like number 4 DJ or something in the world. So I mean, he's huge. And I sat there and I said to my wife, "Holy shit! I just got a direct message from Steve Aoki, you know." And he's like, "Hey, you want to slide some gems my way, you know?" And so we actually got off to a weird start because, you know, he thought I was trying to, you know, jerk him around because he's a celebrity. And you know, I said, "Listen, let's get on the phone. It's easier to talk." And you know, we talked a couple times for a few hours. And I said, "You got to understand something, you know, this wrestling stuff, I get it. You're just sort of like want dabble in it and pick off some stuff, but you got to understand, you know, I've got the number 1 collection in the world. And this is, I like this stuff. It's not really, you know, yeah, there's money involved and stuff, but this stuff's near and dear." And we ended up, you know, talking some more. And I decided to sell to him because I said, "Look, you know, you're going to put this stuff on Instagram. You've got a following that's incredibly large, and you know, maybe it's good for the rest of my stuff, you know." And so anyway, we struck a deal, and I actually sold him. I had 2 of the 85 tops Hogan's, the yellow one and a 10, and I sold him my spare. So we worked a deal. And but you know, it's interesting too. I sold him a John Cena, and actually a couple of John Cena's. And you know, when you talk to a guy like that, he wanted pop culture. He has zero interest in wrestlers. He wanted pop culture guys.
That makes sense on there. Now, I heard you mention the 85 Hulk Hogan. Now, I know there's the tops one, there's the Opeachy. You just mentioned a yellow one. Is there any other variations of that?
Yeah, well, not from 85. There is the Scanlens that came out in 86. They look just like them on the front. You can tell on the back that they're Scanlens. That's an Australia issue only. I don't have any of the Hogans. I got a couple of loose cards from the set. Those are going to be very valuable. I mean, because they're just, I think, and I mean this with all due respect, the New Zealanders and the Australian folks, I mean, they beat up cards like nobody around the world.
They do. I can say that because I get a lot of Scanlens for cricket.
Okay, you never seen cards in this condition. So there's no unopened wax. I deal with it, you know, when I say deal, I mean, I get people contacting me all the time on Instagram or Twitter. There's a gentleman that contacts me on Instagram, and he has some nice Scanlens. He lives in Australia. And he said, "Look, you cannot find unopened wax." I have taken an interest in a set that came out a few years later. There was a New Zealand issue. I did open a box. It's called the Market Scene, but I opened the box and I got some nice cards. You lose a third of the box to the gum. So, I mean, you get 150 cards, but 50 of them are toast. That said, they're packed fresh, right? So, other than wrinkles or, you know, a chipped corner, and then naturally centering, you got a chance to actually get some nice cards. And so, you buy a market scene set from somebody from New Zealand, there's a high probability those cards are beat to shit.
No, I 100% agree with that. So one of the things I wanted to see is some of the different cards in your collection. A few people wanted to see your grills. So I think you said you brought between maybe like 5 or 10 different cards. You want to kind of show them off and some of the different stories behind them?
Sure. I mean, I don't just collect wrestling. This is probably my most expensive card.
Oh, the Tyson. Nice.
Well, no, but it's the Italian back. I mean, it's the real deal. So, I got into wrestling and I picked Hogan, Andre, Flair, and so, I mean, there's so many cards that I was the first person online to say we're going to go up and started, PSA threads. And so anyway, I got into a bidding war one night in 2010 with a guy, and I won a beat up copy of Tyson from a seller in Italy. And so I did some further, sort of research, and I found a thread on the PSA message board where somebody said, "Oh, I think I got shilled." And I was like, wait a second, that was me. I bought that card. So I created an account and I said, I logged in. I said, no, you were bidding against me. I bought that. So I have, Tyson has been, probably my best investment in cards. I bought a bunch. I mean, I have 5 PSA 9s of the Italians. I self-submitted those all myself. And so I never landed a 10. And there was a guy on the message boards that was able to, secure a 10. I don't remember if he submitted it or bought it. I think he submitted it. But anyway, so I needed a 10. And I ended up, he put it on eBay and he gave me luck. And then, we struck a deal. And so I bought that. And, that's easily my most expensive card. The Tyson card has skyrocketed. And so, it's I love it because the picture is actually of Tyson from '85. He had just demolished a guy named Sandy Scaff, and he's being interviewed. I thought it was in Madison Square Garden, but it's actually upstate New York. It just happened to be the MSG network. So there's 2 Tysons. There's the Italian back, and then there's the UK back. The UK back is from '87. It is not the same year. There are stickers in that set from the Australian Open. And so where you read on the back that they won the '87 Australian Open. So the Italian's the one to own. The UK is good, but it's not the quote unquote rookie.
Now, what's the pop on that about, just in general, the Tysons?
Oh, so this is a pop 3, and there's 16 9s. I've got 5 of them.
Wow.
So we're, I'm in real good shape on that situation. So, but no, this is my card that, is just going to go into the, upper echelon because, listen, wrestling's cool. That's my sort of core, but Tyson is, he's Tyson. I mean, he's taken on a mind of his own. And really what helped was that, one, collecting became popular, but 2, when he took that fight, he did he did, he just got so much interest, and he started doing those YouTube videos and stuff. So the next card, this is a really cool set. This is obviously Ric Flair. You can see the back. And this is the Carnation Major League Wrestling set. Now, all the grading companies have it as 86. The back has a copyright of 85. What's interesting about this set is my belief is this was part of Pro Wrestling USA. So in 1984 into 85, the rest of the wrestling world was getting killed by Vince McMahon. And so they formed Pro Wrestling USA. So it was the AWA and NWA. And, they were doing these joint shows to try to, drum up interest. So this is the only 10. It's incredibly, this whole set is incredibly condition sensitive. There's only 3 10s from the set. I have 2. There's a Kamala, there's 2 of those, and then the Flair. And so I'm not really sure. Nobody really knows the story behind these. They came out in carnation, like the cocoa mix, right? But nobody really knows the story because I think they're a regional based deal. There's a poster offer on the back, and there's never been a poster surface. I've never seen a box of carnation that says there's cards inside. Now you have seen packs that had the cocoa mix powder on the outside, so you assume that they were definitely in them, but it's weird. And so super condition sensitive. So many of the cards have a wrinkle on the back, so you're going to get like a grade of a 5. So that right there, even though the 82 All-Stars, Ric Flair is arguably a more popular card, this thing is a monster. I mean, it's a pop 1. There's, I want to say 6 9s, maybe 6 8s. I mean, you're only talking about 15 investment grade cards. It's serious. Next, we've got this is probably my most expensive wrestling card. You're looking at the Andre the Giant. And so this is a PSA 9. There's a huge discrepancy in the way these cards are graded. BGS, you'll see 9 5s of Hogan and Andre. There's no 10s of either from PSA. I mean, that should tell you everything. That's a pop 4 and a 9. I bought that in 2011 for like $1,800, actually 1,822 or something. And, there's literally been 2 copies graded 9 cents. So, 10 years later, I mean, it's the Andre. So for people at home, the Andre is the top card in the 82 Wrestling All-Stars set. And those came mail order only, and they're in a cello pack. And Andre, every single time, is on top. So you have massive corner issues. Centering is a problem on every card in the set. There's no card in the set that has, great centering every single time. And and Andre, I tell you what, it's been great to see his card just get so popular. So that's a monster right there. I mean, you saw sometime back in Golden, and it was cool. My friend Joey Graben, he sold the Andre BGS 9.5 for $47,000, which is cool. He also has one of the 4 9s, and they're locked up in collections. Like you just can't find one of these cards, and that's what's cool, honestly, about a lot of these wrestling cards is they're tied up. You can't just get on eBay and say, hey, that's what I want.
You can't. I mean, that's what I like. That's what I like about vintage and pre-war as well. I'm in the same boat where it's like I can't afford the 7s, the 8s, and 9s, so I'll try to upgrade over time. But you just start with the 2 or 3, and eventually, if you can find a 4 at a show, you trade for it and continue to build these up because it's just so rare. At a certain point, you're just not going to be any on eBay.
Well, I mean, when you go back that far, in reality, I mean, a lot of the high grades are conserved, as pre-war card collector called it. So, like take the 1914 and 1915 Cracker Jacks. Okay, yeah, you're going to have a beautiful white copied card. Most of those are soaked, whether anybody wants to admit it or not.
Yeah.
So, so believe it or not, I mean, you probably would agree. There's a lot of collectors that'll take a strong 5 and feel like, hey, listen, you know what? This thing's not been conserved or altered, whatever
Absolutely.
term you want to use. It is what it is. So next, this is Hulk's 82 All-Star. This is a PSA 9. There's no 10s. The current pop shows 16. That's not real because 3 of them are no longer in those holders. 2 of those got signed, and the guy tried to get a PSA 9 again, and they didn't grade them that high, so they're in Beckett holders. And one of the other ones was a regrade. So I have three of the 13 that exist. This is my best copy because the eye appeal is the strongest. So if you get on PSA's website for card facts, that's the Hogan that you see.
Oh, that's so cool.
If you look at the SMR articles, that's the Hogan you see. So I love that card. I mean, I bought that, I want to say 2013, and that Hogan is Hogan. I mean, he's the Babe Ruth of wrestling, so it is what it is. This is a really cool card. So this 85 tops, this is the blue one. And so this PSA 10, it's a population 1. There's been, I want to say, I looked at it the other day, 644 copies, I believe was the number, and only 110. So the yellow is more of the card that gets the attention, but the blue, so there's 13 PSA 10s of the yellow. There's only 1 of the blue.
So the blue is the rarer card in general?
In high grade, to some degree. The 9s, you see a fairly similar distribution between the blue and the yellow. And a 10, for whatever reason, I mean, it's turned out that it's super rare. That's a great story because some years back when WrestleMania came to Orlando, I got a good buddy, Greg, and as a side gig, he's a vendor at wrestling conventions. So I got to work at WrestleCon in Orlando. And the night before WrestleCon, this card gets listed for $15 opening bid. And I thought to myself, no, I mean, it was a straight auction, but I thought any person that opens this at a $15 minimum bid clearly does not know what they have. Now, this was way before these cards exploded, right? I mean, a yellow was only like $300-400. So I sent him an immediate message and I said, listen, I'll give you $150 if you turn this into a buy it now. Well, he stumbles around for like half an hour to get it done. So I'm hitting refresh. I'm just so scared somebody's going to bid and ruin my deal. And sure enough, it turns into 150. I hit buy it now. I pay instantly. And for the next like 3-4 days, I'm like super nervous. Like, okay, is this card really going to come? And it came. So now here we are years later, and it's still the only 10. So that 85 tops is heavily collected now, like in the PSA registry. So you're seeing people really try to put together nice sets. So that's a set clincher right there, and I'm happy to own that one. That's a good one.
That's a great story on that one. I think everyone can kind of relate to those eBay ones where people just either list it and you want to snipe it right away, and sometimes you just don't get them, or these type of auctions.
So this right here is a yellow version. When we were talking for a second, you mentioned 85, so I figured I'd bring out some of that stuff. This is a great story too, and actually I kept this one. I sold the other one I had, and it was a little tough because one, I had just done the Hulk Hogan article for PSA, and that my other copy was in the pictures. And if you go to the Card Facts site, my other copy is there. That's the one I sold to Steve Aoki. But I decided to keep this one because I self-submitted it. About 3 years ago, I bought a rack box for $450 and ripped it open, and I crushed it. I got a Hogan 10, I got 5 9s, I was hoping for Pipers. I got 2 Piper 10s. Unfortunately, I sold one of the Piper 10s a couple years ago, and that card's up like 10x. I sold it for 200. Last one went for like 2,100. But when you think that a couple things come to mind. One, I got this card graded for $9, and today, the last sale is 21,000. So PSA, the party's over as far as grading. And what I mean by that is, if you grade something big, they're upcharging you, and they're looking at VCP or auction realized prices, whatever data feed you're talking about. So when I graded that, and I paid $9, I paid $4.50 for the entire box. That's just awesome. Today they'd get you for I don't know, maybe $1,000, maybe $2,000 to grade a 10. So the game has just changed so much, and I'm not sure. I get it that they want a piece of the action, and I'm fine with that. But it's a little challenging to think that we're sort of in this window of time where prices have gone up, and what if prices go down? You could end up. I had a guy that emailed me the other day that I talked to, and he graded an 82 Cosmos. It was a PSA 8. They got him for $500. Now I graded my 9, so there's that's a very tough card from Japan. There's a 10, a 9, maybe 2 8s. I'd have to check. They were using a comp on a PSA 6 that went for like $8-something thousand. Well, I know actually that it was paid for. I found that out the other day. But that card's not, a PSA 6 or a PSA 8 of the Cosmos, it's hard for me to sort of view that as like an $8,000 card, maybe, but whatever. Well, I graded my 9 6 or 7 years ago for like $10, So it's tough when all of a sudden the submission fees are getting that high. Final card, I just try to keep it sort of short. Brock Lesnar is my favorite wrestler. This is PSA 10 from the 2002 WWE Royal Rumble set that Flair put out. That's essentially where I sort of stopped collecting. That set's very popular. It's going to continue to get popular because it's got, and these would fit the Beckett rookie card criteria. I guess I could call it that. You have John Cena, Randy Orton, Batista, Stacy Keibler, Brock Lesnar. It is a monster set of stuff. And so they're very condition sensitive. I've opened 7 boxes and got real fortunate, and was able to just continue to buy boxes over time. The Brock is a pop 5. I've got 2 of them. I self-submitted. That pop's not going to grow much. And I'll tell you why, because the last few boxes I bought, the cards were stuck together. So when you have a glossy finish and you have black borders, the condition sensitivity is off the charts. You're not going to get on eBay and be able to buy a set of these cards in nail high grades, because just the shipping alone, like if somebody puts it in, one of those 100 count boxes, they're going to shake around in there and you're going to chip a corner. I found some of these chipped, out of the packs. Matter of fact, actually the last box I opened, I found what I thought was a perfect Brock. The back was miscut.
Oh.
It was just like, you can't be serious, So a 9 for that card is going to turn out to be a super good card. Cena, for example, has slightly more 10s. I found his card to be generally a little bit higher graded out of the pack. I don't know. I've only opened 7 boxes, so that's not necessarily enough data to draw great conclusions. But part of that had to do with the Brock. There's generally a big print dot to the left of his head, and I'm talking a big one. So if you get that huge print dot, odds, maybe if it's perfect, it'll get a 9. If it's not, you're probably getting a 7. So, but Brock's my guy, and I'm thrilled that I was able to self-submit that. So that's about as new as I go. I mean, I will admit, well, actually, you know what? That's funny. Now I start thinking about the dates. It's a 2000. I bought some Nick Gage cards because I don't like Nick Gage. I think that kind of hardcore wrestling stupid, but there's such a market for it at this point because they could do whatever they want. And what the only way I even found out about Nick Gage is, I did a deal with Matt Cardona, and he told me that he was going to be fighting or wrestling, whatever you want to call that, because it was gruesome. He was going to be doing a match with Gage in GCW, and Cardona was bleeding like a pig. I mean, we text back and forth. His back did not stop bleeding for like a week. I mean, because he got suplexed on a table. So I just, at that time, I thought, well, just for speculation, I'll go get this Nick Gage card, but it's actually 2000 BB.
So I have a few other questions from people from Twitter. So the first one is, what would be the Grail Charlotte Flair card?
I wish I could answer that better, to be honest with you. I saw that today on our feed, and I guess what I would do, I'm going to give a shout out to WrestlingTradingCards.com. They're such a valuable resource in the hobby. Their checklists have been so important in my collection. The grading companies use them as the official sort of checklist. And I would say that if there is a low print Charlotte card, so I'll give you an example. In that dialogue, there was talk about Roman Reigns, right? There is a super refractor from years back that's signed. And I remember it went for like 1,500, maybe as much as 8 or 9 years ago. And, Roman kind of sucked for a few years. And, now he's come into his own. He's obviously, their top guy. Well, I bet you that card is probably 5 to 10 grand. I know that's a wide range, but
It's a one of one. You never know.
You just never know. It's 5 at least. Let's just say that. So if Charlotte has low print cards, those are naturally going to be the best. I'm not an expert on her. I would just tell everybody, over time, WrestlingTradingCards.com is redoing their site. They have, some of the checklists aren't up, but I'd go there. And, eBay's just such a valuable resource, go look and just do a completed search by Charlotte Flair and see, if you're seeing any action, because we're in a different time. I mean, I tell you what, years ago, wrestling was a very lonely hobby. There was not that much interest. And probably 3 years ago, Gary Vaynerchuk started posting wrestling cards, and I knew that was the turning point. I actually sold him some cards on the basis, sort of like the Steve Aoki, that he would put them on Twitter. They were what I sort of classify as a sacrificial lamb, because I said, okay, here's the deal. With Gary's followers, I'll sell this even if it goes up. The number of eyeballs that are going to see this is going to help all the rest of my cards. And that's what happened.
Do you think that's also the best way to grow the hobby, is get some of these influencers into it? So maybe some of these other YouTubers have to start talking about wrestling cards, and then their audience starts getting interested in it and starts deep diving into it?
Well, I'll tell you what, yes and no. So what I found lately is, I'll give you an example. Somebody made a comment today and you tagged me, and they had this Hulk Hogan card, right? It's garbage. I mean, it's 85 tops. That's probably going to grade like a 5 or a 6. Well, in my direct messages, he was trying to sell it to me. And, it's like, hey man, I'm good. I've got plenty of those. I think what the problem right now is, there's so many people that Gary and just naturally came in that are part of this flip culture, right?
Yep.
And I don't listen. There is no right way to collect cards. I don't dissuade. if you want to be a flipper, be my guest. I get real frustrated when people say, oh, they're not real collectors, or, I can't believe they want to do that. Listen, man, anything that anybody puts money into, you can't control what the destiny is of that card. I trade stocks every single day, right? I mean, I buy something in the morning that I might sell 5 minutes later. So, so the shareholders of XYZ stock may be like, oh, I hate the day traders. But guess what? Where there's profit opportunity, money follows. So, it is what it is. But I think the reality of it is that as the hobby expands, for wrestling cards to really develop, you need more people to try to build some world-class collections. It can't just be, trading them. So I have, a bunch of people I communicate over the years, and there's 5 or 6 people I know that, sort of at the top of the graded wrestling card game. I mean, it's a small community. And so I would argue that I'd be much more interested to see, people building out collections. Like Jamie Wallace is a guy that's, popular online, and he's developing, a collection of the 98, 99 WCW autos, right? He's holding them, and he's keeping them, right? Now, long term, we'll see what his plans are. I mean, hopefully, for his sake, he enjoys them and he keeps them. But that's what drives demand. You need sticky buyers. If every card that is bought is meant to be sold, that's a house of cards, and that doesn't matter if it's wrestling or soccer or basketball or whatever. And so I think what's helped wrestling is, if you look at the best cards in the graded card hobby, they're stuck in collections. You get on eBay, I think there's, of the Wrestling All-Stars, there's something like 3 PSA 10s for sale, right? Well, you can't get on eBay and buy them, because me and Joey Graben and Greg and Ray from Hawaii and Rob, to a lesser extent on the 10s, we're not selling, right? And so that's how you drive interest. That's how you drive value.
Nice. And speaking of value, so also in one of the Twitter threads, people were talking about the new AEW cards. Who was that wrestler that just signed with the AEW?
Punk.
CM Punk. That's right. So now CM Punk's over at AEW, and Upper Deck's releasing a set or some packs over there. So where do you see that going now, with Topps producing wrestling for WWE and Upper Deck now with AEW?
Well, Topps has been in the game for a while. I think AEW and Upper Deck, it's going to be hot out of the gate. There's no doubt about it. You're seeing posts from lots of people that have bought pre-sale boxes. I mean, it's going to be hot. In all fairness, I hate CM Punk, right? He dissed on the wrestling business for years. He got his ass kicked in UFC twice. I mean, he did not land a punch the other night on AEW Dynamite or whatever it's called. I mean, his finisher, he tried on a guy that's my size. I mean, it was slow motion. So I think he's pathetic in my view, but it doesn't matter what Dave thinks, right? I mean, you had people at that show in Chicago crying in the audience. There's a famous meme now of the guy. I mean, he was so touched. And I get that, because in all fairness, I mean, I've sat here and watched countless WWE, their documentary videos. I've got a ton of them myself, and they've brought me to tears a few times, right? But CM Punk, I mean, the guy weighs like 195 pounds. So to me, the notion that professional wrestling can be built on a guy that's 195 pounds is laughable, right? I mean, it's just stupid. But part of it is the modern wrestling fan, there's so many of them that are just such wimps and such, woke people that, it appeals, like, right? Because a 195-pound guy is, they might be 150, and 145, or 195 is closer to them, right? And so, cool. Me, on the other hand, I like Brock Lesnar. I want a wrestler that can beat your ass. I want a guy that, even though it's scripted, that, if that dude wanted to hurt you, you're toast. And wrestling is built on what they call suspension of disbelief. I cannot suspend belief when it's a 195-pound guy. Now, if it's a 265-pound animal that wants to kill you, yeah, that okay, cool. I can get behind that. So that aside, it's going to be hot. I'm sure if they just released a card of him that was the first one. I mean, things been just gangbusters. If there's an auto in the set, and especially if they do some sort of limited number stuff, it's going to be hot.
Crazy.
So yeah, I mean, I would just say this: I won't be buying any of it, but I'm not their target audience, right? So long term, your guess is as good as mine. Short term, it's going to be super hot, But the problem with a lot of product like that is, as soon as people rip the wax, let's say that they make a one of one of CM Punk.
They'll sell it.
It's going to be on eBay the second somebody pulls it, instead of like, hey man, I really wanted this car. So, not for me, but I think that it's going to be very, very hot.
Okay. And last final question. You hanged out with Ric Flair. So do you want to go over that a little bit? How was that?
So you saw that from Mr. Men. That was one of the coolest things I've ever done, and actually it was a great investment. And so right before Charlotte Flair was going into WWE, she was in NXT. So matter of fact, I mean, you said you live in Orlando, and NXT is right over there at Full Sail. And so it was a Friday night, sitting, chilling at the house. And I saw something, I'd followed on Facebook Ric's agent, and it was a lady out of Charlotte, North Carolina. And so, I was pretty buzzed, and I thought, you know what? I'll send her a message and see if Ric, with Charlotte and Orlando, maybe he does private signings in Orlando. And so I send this email, and I wake up the next day and I was like, oh yeah, I sent that. Okay. Well, Monday, I'm at this work training, and all of a sudden I get a phone call from North Carolina. I was like, who's this? So I leave the training and I go in the hallway, and it's her. Hey, David, this is Ric Flair's agent. I saw your email, and Ric would love to do that. And I was like, oh, okay, cool, right? And I said, well, I really didn't give it much thought. Like, what kind of price range are you talking about? And she goes, well, he does dinners for like 15,000. And I said, listen, I'm gonna be completely honest with you. That's so out of my price range. I mean, I just can't, muster up 15 grand to hang out with Ric. And she goes, well, he could do a lunch for 5,000. And I said, well, honestly, once again, that's kind of more than I had envisioned. I really just want him to sign a few items, and, we'll go from there. Well, so she ends up basically coming back to me she goes, well, I'll tell you what, like, how much are you thinking? I spit out a number. She goes, I'll go back to Ric, and I'll see what he says tomorrow. And she calls me. She goes, I'm surprised, but he took it. He wants to meet you, and the reality of it is I probably paid for his vacation in Orlando to see Charlotte. So anyway, so we get it the next day. So my wife and I drive out to the Grand Cypress, which is a hotel in Orlando. And so this is the best part of the story. Well, I have been told by a good buddy of mine, just sort of through wrestling cards, that Ric was no longer drinking. And so I said to the agent, I said, hey, listen, what do we do? I'm going to meet him at the hotel. A friend of mine says that, he doesn't drink anymore. And she goes, oh, you know, his party days are over. Do not ask him to drink. All right, fair enough. So my wife and I are sitting there in the lobby, and all of a sudden he walks up and he says, David, to this other guy, because I said I'd be in a white shirt, and it wasn't him. I go, Rick. He says, hey, what's up, kids? And I'm like, Rick, it's David. And he goes, oh, you guys want to grab a drink? And I said, hell yeah. So we go over to the lobby bar, and, you know, we're drinking, we're hanging out. It was great. And at the, you know, I was watching my clock at the 52-minute mark. He gets a call. He goes, Dave, sorry, I have to take this. It's Charlotte. And she had gotten into a car accident and she's freaking out. So he goes, oh, baby, do you want me to send you a car? And so, you know, he does. And so his dinner, so we were his sort of like pre-dinner deal. And anyway, so I get to hang out with him for 2 hours and 22 minutes. And so it was great. I got my items signed. You know, we talked for a long time. I mean, he was so cool. He gave me a cell phone number. I text with him. I mean, I don't want to overblow it. It's not like we're like pals, but you know, I'll send him pics from time to time. I was at Raw in Orlando a couple weeks ago, and I sent him a picture of Charlotte, and you know, he said thank you, and so it was great. It was awesome.
Nice. Well, hey, thank you very much for doing this interview. I hope everyone who ended up watching this learned a little bit about wrestling. And then the best way to contact you is what? Either Twitter, Instagram?
Yeah, so on my Instagram at 1982 Wrestling All Stars. I'm on Twitter at dpeck100, and you know, I get questions all the time from wrestling card collectors. So you know, if you're out there and you're collecting wrestling, you got questions, hit me up. It's never a bother.
Awesome. Thank you, David.
All right, thank you for having me.